1975. Huge year. Huge. Hey guys, welcome to Amity Tracks. Been a few weeks since we've done a year. Let's do a big one. 1975. There is a ton of stuff that came out in 75. But let's talk about what's happening around the world in the United States at the time. The Wheel of Fortune premieres on television in 75. It's exciting. OPEC raises gas prices, exacerbating and continuing the financial crisis in the 70s. Space Mountain opens up at Disney World, one of the most iconic roller coasters, right? The Rocky Horror Picture Show opens on Broadway, then closes on Broadway. Then the Rocky Horror Picture Show film debuts, fizzles out, later to become, of course, a cult classic. Saigon falls to the North Vietnamese, slamming the door finally on the Vietnam conflict. Next door to Vietnam and Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge begin their genocide. The Superdome opens up in New Orleans. Saturday Night Live debuts on television. Winning Best Picture that year is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But even more importantly, the biggest milestone in cinematic history, well, at least according to me, Jaws opens up in theaters that summer, forever changing the summer blockbuster. I'm showing you guys here just a little bit of my Jaws collection. I am a huge fan of Jaws. So, let's get into the music. Huge year. Like I said, 75 is a huge year. There is so much here. There's a ton of honorable mentions here. I'm going to go very quickly through these so we can kind of get to the top 10. We'll start with this. I had mentioned Rocky Horror Picture Show. So, you got to talk about the soundtrack, right? Those are iconic songs. Just fantastic. I have this kind of cool edition with the red vinyl. This is also an expanded edition, I think. So it's like a double album. So it's got pretty much everything from the film. Great stuff. Let's see. Here's some. Willie Nelson puts out Red-Headed Stranger. I think, one of country's great, concept albums. Fantastic. Got Bob Marley with his iconic live album. I think other than Legend, this is probably the Marley album that most people have. To me, the definitive version of No Woman, No Cry. Oh my God, that guitar solo in that. So beautiful. Hey, another year in the 70s, another brilliant Steely Dan album, right? Katie Lied. Fleetwood Mac puts out their self-titled, let's call it a reinvention, right? Because you have, there it is on the back. Probably the most successful lineup for the first time here. Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks join. And, well, you know how huge they are. Rest in peace, Christine McVie. Aerosmith, of course, puts out Toys in the Attic. Just killer rock and roll. Let's see, what else we got here in the honorable mentions. Man, this is a big year. The Band puts out their last great album, Northern Lights, Southern Cross. We're gonna do a band episode here soon where we'll talk a lot more about that stuff. But that's a great album. David Bowie just keeps on going in the 70s with Young Americans. His kind of plastic soul, as he himself called it. The iconic title track, of course. But This whole thing is awesome. Wind, Fascination. I dig all that stuff. The Who by Numbers. One of their somewhat overlooked, I think, sort of singer-songwriter-ish album. But yeah, definitely Pete Townsend's most confessional songwriting with The Who. Brian Eno puts out his groundbreaking, really important Another Green World and a fantastic listen. Also breaking ground in a similar vein, Tangerine Dream with Rubicon, sort of continuing what they were doing with on Phaedra, which I already talked about earlier year. Great stuff. All right, last little bit here on the honorable mentions. Told you I'm gonna try and go quick here. Stephen Stills live, great live album. One side acoustic, one side electric. Electric side's a little sloppy, but man, that acoustic side just awesome. Miles Davis, Agartha. This is this is thick, heavy fusion stuff. Recorded on the same day as Pangea, which is also awesome. Although I think I give the slight edge to Agartha. The Eagles put out One of These Nights, which I like. Obviously, I'm showing it here. Sometimes you have to kind of hide your face in shame if if you like the Eagles. Some of those guys are such douchebags, but but I don't know. I like a lot of these records. And then finally, now this came out. Let's see, I have it here. This came out. This was released in 2019, but recorded in 1975. So I included here this wonderful box here. Bob Dylan Live 1975, the Rolling Thunder Review, one of his bootleg series. Great box set with got three records in there, plus a really great booklet with all the photos. But one of my favorite, at least that I've heard, tours of Dylan. It is awesome. It is fantastic. All right. Here we go. Top 10 for 1975. At number 10, I've got another one that was released way later. This was released in 1992. But again, most of these sessions were recorded. This was recorded kind of sporadically, but most of these sessions in 75. So I include this in 1975. This might be one some of you guys haven't listened to, but I highly recommend it, especially if you're a fan of Big Star like I am. And that is the one and only record from Chris Bell, I Am the Cosmos. Great album cover, too. Alex Chilton gets most of the attention, with Big Star, but I'm a big fan of Chris Bell's work also. And like on that first Big Star record, it's really those two guys working together that made that magic. And these were just kind of, like I said, some sporadic sessions that never totally came together, where Chris Bell was, I guess, trying to put together a solo album, kind of jumpstart his career as a solo artist. Of course, he tragically died in a car accident, so that never happened. And this is all we've got, really, from Chris Bell. But man, it shows you why he was just as important as Chilton was to that Big Star magic. Just awesome. I Am the Cosmos. And what's the other one? You and Your Sister, kind of the two well-known songs that sometimes show up on Big Star comps. But this whole thing, man, Speed of Sound is gorgeous. I Kind of Got Lost is great. Man, this is just good stuff. All right, at number 9, we have Neil Young and Crazy Horse, Zuma. With so the new version of Crazy Horse that gels and comes together with Frank Sampedro taking the place of Danny Whitten on guitar. And this, of course, includes Cortez the Killer, while historically a little inaccurate. That still bothers me a little bit lyrically, but musically, one of Neil Young's finest moments. His guitar playing on Cortez the Killer is just gorgeous. It's one of those sort of languid, melodic, beautiful, moody stretched out crazy horse tunes. So good. All right. Number 8. This was huge. Kiss Alive. The double live album of double live albums in the 70s, I would argue. Maybe Frampton Comes Alive goes there too, but those two dudes. Yeah, Alive. Just what totally broke Kiss through into the mainstream, made them huge superstars of the 70s, and deservedly so. This album rocks. Yes, notoriously, there was a lot of studio cleaning up and touch ups, but whatever. It's awesome. This is awesome. Let's see here. Another double, number 7. Led Zeppelin's sprawling masterpiece, Physical Graffiti. I've really grown to appreciate this and more recently. I mean, there's always great songs on there that that I always loved, but as a whole, as a piece, 10 Years Gone, I think, is one of the most underrated Zeppelin songs ever. Just beautiful. But this whole thing plays, kind of like one of those, messy, sort of Beatles White Album, Fleetwood Mac Tusk, Rolling Stones Exile on Main Street, one of those double albums that sort of sprawls, and where the strength is sort of how messy it is and the diversity. Of course, this was this was some new material that they were writing, but also some leftovers from some previous sessions, and so that's kind of, I think, one of the reasons why it was, sort of all over the place, but in a wonderful way. Okay, number 6. We have Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow, which is his, I think, I just use this word, but I'll say it again, masterpiece of fusion. Usually when we talk about fusion, we're kind of come from the jazz side, like Miles Davis and Mahavishnu Orchestra and whoever else. Kind of coming from the jazz side, incorporating some rock stuff. This, of course, is coming from the other side, a rock artist bringing in jazz elements, and it's brilliant stuff. I mean, I go on about, I have already on this channel gone on about Jeff Beck's brilliant guitar playing, and this is, I don't know, maybe Exhibit A, I don't know, but it's one of his most celebrated records. Okay, number 5. Number 5 is fantastic, and it is Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy from Elton John. And this, actually, here, pretty great album art there. I mean, this is awesome because there aren't, it doesn't really contain any huge hits. I mean, what Someone Saved My Life Tonight, is fairly well known. That's about it. And so, unlike, as great as a lot of his other records are from this era, it's not overplayed. I mean, it still sounds really fresh. It's sort of this concept album. Elton and Bernie Taupin were sort of reflecting on their roots and how they got started, and so it kind of tells their story, of how they got to this point. But really, it's just the compositions are fantastic, and it really holds together. Beautiful record. All right, we're getting into some big ones here. Let's see. I'm almost flipping 4 and 3, but I'm going to keep the order. At 4, I do have Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks. I don't know, the greatest breakup album ever. I don't know. You'd have to, that could be a good video in its own right. You got to look at Springsteen's Tunnel of Love. What is it? Oh, what's that? Richard Thompson, Linda Thompson, right? I'm totally drawing a blank on the title, but yeah, there's some great breakup albums. But Bob Dylan, Blood on the Tracks, man. Tangled Up in Blue, Idiot Wind. This whole thing, though. If you see her, say hello. Shelter from the Storm. Oh man, I mean, just lyrically, this is brilliant. It's raw, but still kind of enigmatic enough. Which it's always Dylan's best work, I think. But yeah, his marriage was falling apart, of course, and so he, a lot of this, at least in mood, addresses that. And one of his finest works. Well, I've been listening to a lot of Dylan lately. Go through phases, right? Like we'll do a Dylan video soon. All right, top three here. Now the top three I have already addressed in other videos, so I don't need to go too deep into them. In fact, number three, there was an entire video based on a poll in our community section where you guys chose it, but a whole video on this record, Neil Young's "Tonight's the Night." Now this was recorded, and I know this by me saying this, it makes this video a little inconsistent because you know I've had two other things here where I said they were recorded some other time, no, recorded in this year but released some other time. This was actually recorded in 73 but released in 75, but it really kind of fits in 75. So Neil Young's "Tonight's the Night," just a dark journey through the soul. uh, Real briefly, because we have a whole video on this album if you want to go do a deep dive into it. Great video. But two very close associates of Neil's had died from heroin overdoses, Danny Whitten and Bruce Berry. And so this is sort of a reaction in some ways to that. It's beautifully, wonderfully sloppy, drunken. um, but I mean, obviously depressing, kind of. But I don't know. It's kind of still I'm wanting to say fun, but fun's not the right word. It's still a great listen, though. It's not so down that it's just like you can't listen to it. Um, yeah, man. Come on, baby, let's go downtown is a great tribute to Danny Whitten because it actually features him playing and singing some vocals. Albuquerque's probably my favorite song on here. But anyway, tonight's the night. Go watch that video if you're interested. All right, 2 and 1. Excuse me. 2 and 1. I have flipped back and forth leading up to recording this video, and it's kind of funny. Like right before I started recording, I had it flipped again, but now I'm going back to my original, ranking. And I have talked about both of these records in other videos. So again, I don't need to go into a ton of detail. These two records, in fact, these two records were featured in the two weeks that we have dedicated to certain artists. Well, the two that we've done so far, it's those two artists, but this happens to be 75 here. And in fact, our most recent one, Pink Floyd, is my number 2. Pink Floyd, "Wish You Were Here." The brilliant tribute in some ways to Syd Barrett, and also sort of a brutal look at the soul-killing music industry, with "Welcome to the Machine" and "Have a Cigar." "Have a Cigar," that great line, "Which one's pink?" Which was a quote from supposedly some record exec who they met at a party who had totally clueless, was complimenting them on all the cash that was flowing in from their records, and he wanted to meet the leader of the band, so he said, "Hey, which one's pink?" Like he thought Pink Floyd was the leader of the band. But yeah, I mean, some of David Gilmour's most fluid, beautiful guitar playing. The title track is just gorgeous. Anyway, there you go. And number 1, for me, it's got to be Bruce Springsteen's "Born to Run." There you go. The record that broke him out into the big time. His last chance with Columbia Records. This was his 3rd record. And I told this story in the Springsteen week, but they were about ready to drop him from the label. And they basically said, "Look, dude, you got one more record. You got one more record to prove that you can be a viable artist." And boy, did he prove it. Classic masterpiece. I mean, the culmination of that early Springsteen era before he really would kind of change his sound a little bit with "Darkness on the Edge of Town" later. But yeah, "Thunder Road," the title track, of course. "Jungle Land" being probably his most epic song. Just brilliant stuff. So much, you know, just that iconic album cover, man. So much hope and just optimism, busting out of here. Going to sort of bust out of our circumstances here. But there, there's darkness here too, as there always is. There's always some darkness lurking in it, even in the most joyous of Springsteen records. Man, what a year, 75. Well, all right, guys. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel. It really, really helps us out and lets us keep doing what we want to do. And then I've mentioned this before, but some previous or the next episode coming up, I'm pretty excited about because it's kind of rare, but I'm going to be featuring a new artist or newer artist that, well, you guys know my tastes, so like a new artist that I think people who are big fans of sort of classic rock can really get into, because this artist kind of echoes some of that, but not just aping it. I mean, he's his own deal too, and I'm just so impressed with this guy. Who is it? You'll have to wait and see on Thursday. All right, we'll see you next time on Amity Tracks.